The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Hello. Uh-oh, we're back into the intro. There we go. Hello, welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
I'm Carlos.
And CJ is, I guess he might be done, but he underwent a little surgery today, so we wish him well. Mm-hmm. He's probably, I don't
know if it's a prayer, but I'm praying for him.
Well, he's probably so high on the, yeah, on the drugs they put him under on. He doesn't even know what planet he's on right now. So he's a happy camper now, and we have to deal with Fall River again and the never-ending saga of as the stomach turns. So I don't know even where to begin. I know that the council agenda for next week has $3 million for school repairs, and they're spending money, you know, they just can't stop. They love to spend money, but they can't pay their bills. And, you know, this is a problem. And then now, of course, our man Carlos here is in the eye of the storm. Yes. Of the controversy on the Coughlin School. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we can...
Very interesting.
Yeah, well, why don't you give us a little update on what's going on here?
Well, I think what happened was because I requested the fire department to attend our last neighborhood meeting, and that was 4 days after the fire. Mm-hmm. And I requested Joe Bisco from the building inspector to attend, and a few more people, but only the fire department went there. And we had like 38 people. That I called my clerk just to verify the meeting. We had 38 people at our last meeting. And was mentioned on that meeting that the 100-hour call dispatcher was never came to the fire department. With that being said, because something went wrong, and according to them, and I'm not preaching what are the rules on this, but supposedly is just a non-function. Could be electric power down, could be low battery, that something came out to the police station. And that call never would passed on to the fire department.
Well, let me.
Now you are the priest on this. So
let me set the record straight here. And I did have a conversation this morning with the house captain at the Flint. He gave me his interpretation on what went on. But I'm not defending the fire department, because he did say that someone said they did a drive-by. I believe it was Mr. Furtado. I don't know which Furtado it was. There's a lot of them, but they didn't. I know the fire marshal. He's fairly new, and also a lot of these people aren't really. They're not really. They haven't had a lot of experience in these issues in public speaking, and they don't understand that sometimes that people don't understand the fire department or the way these things are supposed to be done or are done. And also they make generalizations because they assume people know what they're talking about. And I think they were talking in general statements about troubles and things, but they should have been more specific. And as I told the individual I spoke to this morning, I told him to send a message. I happen to know the fire marshal very well. He's a good guy, very conscientious, but he's not really experienced in this stuff. And what you have to do in a situation like this, when you have a situation that resulted in some a major loss and there's an issue on it, the first thing you have to do is, rather than open for questions, you have to give basically a statement of facts that you know up to this point, and it would clarify a lot of things. Had he begun by saying, we never got informed of the trouble light, and then explained our procedure, which is an extremely good procedure, then people would have understood that had that procedure been followed, we may have avoided this issue. And this is what disturbs me, because I'm not sure if there's gonna, how they're gonna try to deal with this, but the fact is, when a trouble light comes in a fire alarm system, it is supposed to be reported to the fire department. And I will go over the scenario. You get a trouble light, the dispatcher is supposed to, it comes up on the computer, trouble. She informs the chief there's a trouble light, and in this particular case, the Coughlin School. The chief will then dispatch a company to investigate. Because the trouble is an indication of many things. It could have been, it actually could be, there could be a electrical issue, a short or something like that, which could cause a fire or whatever, or it could be, a ground fault or whatever. But they have to send people over to investigate. So they send it, and they don't do a drive-by. That was a very poor choice of words. They physically get off the truck and go and check the building out. They go make sure the building's secure. They look through the windows. They don't enter the building because they're secured normally. And if they're unsecured, they're going to notify someone, because that could have indicated something. So that's the first part of the procedure. If they determine there's no, hazard at the moment, it doesn't stop there. They come back, they let the chief know, and then the procedure is to call a contact person for that building. In this particular case, with it being a school property, but it's no longer school property, basically, it's no longer a school, and by city ordinance, that all buildings are under the purview of the Department of Community Maintenance. So what should have happened, and I'm not speaking in theory, I'm speaking in actual fact, because I did this thousands of times during my career, and then what you do is every single property has a list of contact people. We require it in the Knox box. In the Knox box and also at fire alarm, they have a list of people to contact in the event there's a problem with the building. So what it should have happened in this particular circumstance is the DCM should have been contacted. They should have said, you have a trouble light at the Coughlin School, send somebody to check it out. And then it's up to them to restore, get it fixed, find out what the trouble is, and get the trouble light cleared. Now, if that would have been done, the individual might have found there were people in the building, it could have avoided. But the thing that really disturbs me about this is that the second part B, the way these alarm systems that I said on a previous program, the way these alarm systems are made, a trouble light is overridden, is superseded by a fire light. They're designed where a fire light is the #1 priority. It's a fire alarm system. So if there's a trouble light, a fire comes in, the fire will immediately send in a fire code to dispatch. Now, why that didn't happen is a major question. And that's why this deserves a full investigation. Because if they said that, well, it couldn't stay in, why didn't it send in a fire light if there was a fire? And if the box, somebody said, well, the box may have been physically removed, or they may have tampered with the box. Well, the only way to eliminate that trouble light, and therefore, and like I explained even to the individual today, because he's not a chief, he doesn't understand, the way a fire alarm system is created, there's 3 separate parts. The building they're responsible for their panel and everything in the building. Fire department and dispatch is the other end of that circuit, and they're responsible for their computers and their equipment. And the interconnecting line is the telephone company's line. So whenever we have a situation like this, if there's a trouble light, we check. They call down a tech. The guy says, no, it's not here. It's got to be the fire department. Fire department's already checked this. They said, no, it's not us. Now you got to call a telephone company and say, obviously you've got a problem with your line. It could have been a telephone guy working on something that did something to the line, and it caused it to show trouble. But there's a very, very, a very, very well-known and it's been used for years, so they check out the system. So now the system had its integrity because they got the trouble light. Now, if that box was tampered with and that trouble light disappeared, that system would have showed that it went offline. And when it went offline, that's a major red flag. If it goes offline, it could mean that the system has now been, overpowered by a fire maybe, or who knows what happened. But now that fire alarm system is no longer protecting that building. The chief has to be notified, and obviously there would have been a response. So, that's another issue. But the reality is that was a major liability and flaw, because it has to be answered why that trouble light was not reported to the fire department. And the fact is, no dispatcher, because it's the fire department has a legal obligation, and they also to report fires, to investigate things like this. It's part of a fire alarm system. And anything that has to do with the fire department or fire alarm systems has to be reported to the fire department. And this is one of the problems I had many, many years ago about sending dispatch over to civilians, and especially civilians who work for the police department, because they have a tendency to look at fire and go, well, it's not that big a deal. Well, they don't understand it. They're not professionals. They don't understand the systems they're monitoring, and they don't understand what the liabilities are. And the reality is, and I don't care what Lou Pacheco said, it probably wouldn't have made a difference. Well, Lou Pacheco doesn't know the SOPs for the fire department because he's a police chief. The fact is, had this been done properly, you would have had the fire department looking in that building. You would have called DCM, and DCM would have sent somebody down there to check that building. And you're not telling me that wouldn't have increased the possibility that this thing didn't happen. So that's my problem about this whole issue.
And I'm going to give you an example why I think that something went wrong. Because, and I have said this in here before, 2 months ago, I was at city council meeting, and I got a call from my janitor, which is a person that has the key from my building, who was the first person that I give the key because he lives right across the street. He lives right across the street. In case of an emergency, somebody needs to get in the building, you have the key. He's a retired retired janitor. And I said, here's the key. If an emergency comes up, you have the key. You're right across the street. You get there first than me. And he called me and he said, Carlos, you have a fire truck here. And I opened the door for them to get in the school. So, and I started getting text messages. And it was just something wrong with the board, because we don't have nothing going on the building. We don't have people going on the building. Mm-hmm. It was something happened, and that lights came off, and the police sent the message to the fire, and all the protocols were done, and the fire department got there, and they could not get into the box because the key was being locked in there for so many years. They had rust problem, so they were going to knock the door. When my janitor said, "You don't have to. I have the key here. I will open the door for you," and that's exactly what happened. So everything was followed.
Yeah.
Right on that case. This is the exactly same case. Something went wrong with the board. Probably, and I told the Herald News when they called me, was I'm not an investigator, but I can put two and two together. If what happened was that people probably saw the panel somewhere, a beep on that panel, and they tried to shut it off. Either they cut wires, they disconnected wires, whatever they did, that would cause.
Or they shut the panel off. There is an off switch on a panel. Exactly. You can shut the panel off.
So if people went to that building at that time, okay, they will be cutting these people inside the building. These people were working on that building all night. Okay. Now comes the second part, which was the mayor on the Herald News the following day, saying that the fire started at 5 o'clock. to me, what I think that happened was the second alarm call came in at 5 o'clock, and that's when the fire department drove the run, because now that call came out to the fire department because it was the second call, and that's the one that they drove a run to school. And then when the neighbors call in, the 8 o'clock call was the neighbors, was not even the school alarm, was the neighbors that called the fire department with the fire. Okay, so here what I think that happened.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I'm going to tell you, Carlos. You know, that's your scenario, but I did that job for a long time, so we can't speculate.
Yeah.
Say, like when I go to court, I can't say. When they say that if they use a accelerant and I say gasoline, the defense attorney is going to say, well, you said it's gasoline. Are you a chemist? Mm-hmm. Did you? The only way I can say, I have to say there was an accelerant used. I can't specify unless we've done tests and I have an affidavit from a valid testing agency as to what the accelerant is. That's how so I can't speculate, but from what I've been told, the fire department, the first time they got the alarm is when they went to the fire at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
So there was no drive-by. The fire department never went until they went to the fire. This is why I said I'm going to give you procedures how it should have been done. Mm-hmm. The fact is, what should happen now is there should be a full investigation, because there is a liability on the city's part. Mm-hmm. You know, they did have the opportunity to take some kind of action that they didn't, and something wasn't done that should have been done. When that trouble light came in, that trouble light should have been reported to the fire department. Mm-hmm. And as I said, then that would have triggered a series of things that could have possibly prevented what happened. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, if the insurance company gets a hold of this information, you may have difficulty, the city may have difficulty getting paid, because, you know, they did not, there is a liability here. It's like the fire department. If they call me to go to a fire and I don't go, and the building burns down, mm-hmm. the city's on the hook. There have been lawsuits throughout the country against fire departments for lack of following procedures, and they have been won in many cases. But the fact is, the issue here is that, you know, there are a lot of questions, and the only way to answer those questions is to investigate. But the bottom line is, we know now they're saying that the fire department was never informed of the trouble light, and that immediately, there was a, you know, that completely stopped the ability to maybe abate this situation and maybe prevent this situation. Because had that alarm, as I said, been reported, there is a series of protocols that are followed, mm-hmm. which would have meant that the fire department, and they don't do a drive around. I'm gonna, you know, it's not a drive around. The next time you're at the meeting, you can ask the Flint captain, and he will tell you they physically get off the trucks and they look in the windows and they walk around and they check. You know, that's what their job is. If they drive by and don't check the building and something happens later, they're going to be in trouble. Because whenever I sent the truck, I expected that truck to check the premises. Mm-hmm. And so, but none of these things happened. You know, and you know, but see, there is a responsibility on those people. That's their job. You know, we've had many cases where people go, oh, it took the fire department 20 minutes to get here, and then we review the tapes and we find out that nobody called the fire in. You know, the building's burning and everybody in the neighborhood standing outside watching a fire burn, and everybody thinks somebody else called. And they go, oh, the fire department's got to know about this fire. And they didn't. I mean, we have cases that are, you know, you could tell it, you'd think you made them up. We had a fire one time down the far south end, and the building was almost gone when we got there, and there were people out there with garden hoses, and the people who owned the building, we said, nobody called the department. And they told me, oh, we didn't know we had a fire department. And I swear that actually happened. They didn't know they said they didn't know they were from Portugal. They didn't have a fire department. No bombers where they were from.
bombers.
Yeah, so they didn't even know. So they were trying to put the fire out with garden hoses, didn't realize we had a fire department. And it was like, and it's a true story.
Yeah.
You know, and there was a time where the Lowell Fire Department called Fall River to report a fire in Fall River. And again, it was people who lived in Lowell, and the only number they had was the Lowell Fire Department, so they called the Lowell Fire Department to report a fire in Fall River, and the Lowell dispatchers called our dispatchers, and we still had fire dispatchers, and the dispatcher said, "You're not serious." And the guy said, "No, this is the Lowell Fire Department." And he said, "You got a fire on Choate Street." And we did. So, you know, it's not that things don't happen, and in a sake, but this is something that procedurally went wrong, and there is a liability here. And there was a major loss because of this, and this has to be looked into, and you know, and it has to be avoided. That, you know, it has to be rectified so everybody knows what their job is. You know, dispatch's job is if there's a fire, you got to report it to the fire department. Police, you got to report it to the police. And then the fire department has its obligations. We have the obligations to check that trouble light and then inform someone, as you did. Like you said, your people were informed, they let you in the building. But if you open up every Knox box, which has the keys, and only the chiefs have the keys, the only people that have the keys to the chiefs, they open a box, there's normally a list of contact people in there. So we know who to call. It's not just we go there, we check, and we say, oh, no, we follow up. Now we turn it over to the people and say, look, we've checked as much as we can. If you want us to wait here and open up the building, we'll go in with you. If you want to come in and check it. But I mean, the key is, you know, this was basically, it was doomed from the start because the trouble light was fundamentally ignored. Because if it goes to dispatch and they don't dispatch anybody, well, they ignored it.
Yeah, I think that's what we having, you know, the problem. And the good thing, it was I don't know if you heard the interview yesterday, Chief Racine on WSAR. He did agree that, you know, that call never got out to the fire department.
Yeah.
So that's why they're having an intern investigation.
Yeah, well, let's see what happens. But no, we got that. But no, let's get back to this uncontrolled spending. I know we spent a lot, but I think the people especially you know, the people in the Flint, but the people in the city, I think this was a good thing to discuss, because people have to feel comfortable that they're being protected. You know, we've got enough problems with worrying about manning issues and stuff. We don't want people to think that people are not being held accountable. I'm always complaining about our financial team and our politicians not being held accountable, but I firmly believe that everybody should be held accountable. That's why there should be a full and thorough investigation of this, and whoever, and there should be, there should be a resolution, and one of the resolutions is learn from this and ensure that everybody that sits in a chair knows that, you know, we have to follow, you know, if it's a fire issue, you know, the first thing you learn as a chief is if you can get rid of the responsibility, there's enough responsibility being a chief. And if you can get rid of some of it, go. And if, you know, a dispatcher should say, well, you know something, I got a fire call, I'm going to dump it over to the fire department, and if they screw up, my job is done, I'm covered. And the same thing with the fire department. When I was at a fire, if I could turn it over to the gas company, the electric light company, or somebody else, I go, hey, it's your job, this is yours. But because there's responsibility in these jobs. But the people in the city have to feel safe. And when something like this happens, and it's not like, you know, things do happen. You know, mistakes are made, people human. But the fact is that when you make a mistake, what you have to do, especially when it comes to public safety, is ensure that you investigate it, you identify what went wrong, and make sure it never happens again. And I think that the people all over the city, you know, needed to hear this discussion and kind of say, look, because it's been in the newspaper, but they write a small overview. So now you got a different perspective. You got a perspective from somebody who did that job, who knows what's supposed to be done, and you know, and hopefully Chief Racine is going to conduct a full and thorough investigation, and they're going to ensure that, number one, there's accountability, but more importantly, that this mistake never happens again, because, you know, this mistake was a very costly mistake.
And I mean, it was lucky that nobody got hurt, and our fire department didn't got hurt.
Yeah.
But it's something that really.
Yeah, but now they're going to spend $3 million renovating the school, and they're going to spend all kinds of money.
My thought on this is the city is not here to make money on fixing schools. I can bring my school up to code with $500,000. You know, this building needs a roof, and $3 million.
That's the cushion. Remember, we always have to have a cushion. And you also know about government.
We can do that job for $1 million.
Government, it always costs 4 or 5 times more, and it's done with absolutely the worst quality possible. All you got to do is look at Durfee High School. It's 40 years old or so, and now they're going to bulldoze it and build a new school. And we spent millions of dollars. One person went to jail, a few other people had to resign their positions, and look what we got. Yet you look at Las Vegas, and they build a casino. They build a casino the size of a city, and in a year, and it's built beautifully. So we've learned that government doesn't spend money well. But I urge everybody to look at the agenda for Tuesday night. There's some things on the agenda, a lot of spending, and remember that they're not paying their bills now. Mr. Nunes, our illustrious treasurer, said at the retirement board meeting 2 months ago that the city is having a cash flow problem. And I have that in writing in the minutes of the meeting. So my question to the city council is, if we're having a cash flow problem, why are we spending all this money and bonding and putting ourselves in deeper debt?
I mean, 2 weeks ago it was $3 million.
Yeah. So.
And another $3 million.
Yeah, no, we're going to be
2 weeks.
Yeah, every 2 weeks. And so, I mean, you know, and this morning I got a call, and supposedly one of our financial team was complaining about paying the retirement system on time, even though they were told they had to pay it, that the 2 things they have to pay on time is the debt service and the retirement. And they don't understand that if they don't pay this, and I guess the statement was made that, you know, at some point in time, we're going to have to choose between paying the employees and paying the retirement. Well, if that happens, you haven't done your job. Because what's going to happen in that case is they're going to declare this city as being in receivership, and they're going to void every contract, and the first thing they pay after they go into receivership is their retirement obligation, because these people earn this. They have a fiduciary responsibility. I am very, very disturbed when I see this rampant spending. It just never stops. Every single meeting, they're figuring out ways to spend, you know, millions of dollars, and they're always complaining. Because let's remember, before this election, people, you know what all this spending means? More taxes next year, increases in all the fees, because they've admitted they don't have enough money to pay the bills they have now. I don't know about you, but if I don't have enough money to pay my bills, I can't go out and buy another car, because unfortunately, unlike cities who just keep bonding and killing us with their taxes, nobody will give me a loan. If I go to the bank and say, I want to buy a brand new car, and they go, you can't even pay your electric light bill. We're not going to give you a loan. So, but the city never has that problem. They just keep spending and spending and spending. And they say, don't worry, Fall River's getting better all the time. And next year they'll say, your taxes are too low.
We will stop printing money.
That's
One
right.
of these days we're going to stop printing.
So, Caesar, I'm telling you, what are you going to do with that building? We're going to save that building?
We're going to try to save that building. We're still on the mission.
Well, we see our thing, stay angry. September, it is September. We have a primary, and we have a debate on September 16th. Make sure you go, see our debate, the mayoral debate, and, you know, hope CJ's feeling well, you know, and we will see you on Wednesday. No show on Monday because of the holiday.